Greetings, Michael Didier here. We are Israel Blog. This is our Sabbath class, and we're glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. We're working our way through the Torah. Well, we started this, must have been about 2 years ago. We're now up to Deuteronomy, starting 6 today. We're going to review 4 and 5 quickly. Keep in mind, Yehovah gives his commandments to who? Do you remember who they are? We have been taught the children of Israel. Oh my goodness. And even worse, we make ourselves the children of Israel, we, those Christians, by virtue of believing in a man who we think is Spirit Elohim in the flesh. Oh my goodness, what have we done? We saw last week, Yehovah has no form. Not gonna be in any form. Not a male, not a female, not a fish, not a bird, nor anything in the air, or anything in the seas, or anything on the land. He's Spirit Elohim, an invisible Elohim. He gives his commandments to his son Israel. No! Israel! Listen to the statutes and the judgments. When I teach you to do them, that you may live and go in and possess the land. Oh, Father, I want to go in and possess the land. I want to live. We're going to see he's going to prolong our days if we will obey him. He says, don't add to his word. Don't take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of Yehovah, your Elohim, which I command you. Who's the your that we're talking about? It's Israel's seed. Nobody else. Everybody else. Our sons, our daughters, our servants, our women. The ger who dwells with us, follow us. We teach the ger, the word of Elohim. So when he becomes an Ezra man, a spiritually born man at Passover, then he too will know the words of Elohim. We forget. Yehovah did not give a single commandment, statute, judgment, ordinance to any Babylonians, any Egyptians, any Assyrians, any U.S. citizens. He gave them to the men who left the kingdom of their birth and joined him under his jurisdictional authority. That's why when we went back, where were we? We were at the, what do they call it? The plain of Moab. And we began here, this is verse 3, we began to walk after Master Peor. Who was Master Peor that we walked after? Other lawmakers and judges besides Yehovah. We're going to see the first commandment today. We talked about it last week. Thou shalt have no other Elohim existing before my face. No other lawmakers and judges existing before my face. Was this a live man? Maybe. Maybe it was a dead man. We follow dead man. How about Jesus? We follow lots of dead men. People do it all over the world. We keep Spirit Elohim's statutes and judgments and ordinances, and we see that, especially in the book of Deuteronomy, we see that over and over and over again. Verse 5. I love this section. Surely I've taught you statutes and judgments, just as Yehovah my Elohim commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. Listen to what the people say about us. Therefore be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom. Hear that? Observing Yehovah's statutes and judgments and ordinances is our wisdom and our understanding in the sight of the peoples, who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation, you know what, we're just a little nation, but we are a great nation, is a wise and understanding people. Remember, we're talking about the men, not the ladies, not the children, not the servants, male and female, and not the ger who dwell with us. He's giving them to us. And what great nation is there that has such statutes and righteous judgments as are in all this law, which I set before you? Oh, I missed a good one. It says, for what great nation is there that has Elohim so near to it, he dwells in our midst, as Yehovah our Elohim is to us. For whatever reason we call upon him, he hears the prayer of his Kassid, his saints. He says, only take heed to yourself and diligently keep yourself. Keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Keep them in your heart. Why? And teach them to your sons and your grandsons. We're not teaching them to our daughters. The daughters follow us. The granddaughters follow us. Here, take careful heed to yourself, for you saw no form when Yehovah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire. We saw no form. There is no form. He's Spirit Elohim. That's why he always appears in pillars of fire and smoke, or just fire and smoke. Lest you act corruptly and make yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of a male or a female. Don't do it. Talks about taking heed lest you lift your eyes. He just mentioned male, female, animals, winged animals, things that creep on the earth, sun, the moon, the host of heaven. He says, you feel free, or you feel driven to worship them. What is the word they use for worship? Here it is. Shikah. To prostrate yourself to them. How do we do that? All hail the chief! Everyone rise! You know what? Worship doesn't have to be bowing down. It's giving, what's the word? I know I'm going to say it wrong. Here it is. Obeisance. I just saw it. There it is right there. To do obeisance. To do reverence. To stoop. To worship. You know, worship is how we live our lives. This is a hard gospel to teach. The good news that Elohim reigns on the earth. People don't want to hear it because you know what? They don't want to leave the kingdom of their birth. It changes everything in their life, doesn't it? Well, it does. The Elohim of the land wants you to worship them. But you're not going to live eternally if you're worshiping the Elohim of the earth. Don't fear them. Fear Yehovah. Well, we have so much to learn. When you beget sons and grandsons and have grown old in the land and act horribly and make carved images and in the form of anything and do evil in the sight of Yehovah thy Elohim to provoke him to anger. He says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. Yehovah said he'd scatter us among all the peoples. That's what he did. We're scattered. Help us, Father. But look at what he says in verse 29. But from there, thou wilt seek Yehovah thy Elohim. Talking to the men. And thou wilt find him if thou seek him with all your heart and with all your soul, all your lavav and all your nefesh, your thoughts and emotions. When you are in distress and all these things come upon you in the latter days, when thou turn to Yehovah thy Elohim and obey his voice, Yehovah thy Elohim is faithful. I didn't put it on there. Faithful. He's a faithful Elohim. Let me look at that word. Merciful. Compassionate. Yeah, no, this is not the chesed word that we're talking about. There's several things that are translated as mercy. You shall show no mercy on them. Not the same word as chesed, and not the same word as this one, rakum. Rakum. Compassionate. He is compassionate. He's more than compassionate, though. We'll see that today, too. For Yehovah is a merciful, compassionate Elohim. He will not forsake thee, nor destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he swore to them. You know what? He's going to do what he says he's going to do, but we've got to become what he needs us to become. You can't become his kind, his chesed, a spiritually born man, and remain in the kingdom of your birth. You got to leave those kings, those rulers, those lawmakers and judges. Well, he finished up by talking about the three tribes, the Gadites, the Reubenites, half the tribe of Manasseh, who took the land on the east side of the Jordan. Then we went to chapter 5. We talked about the 10 Commandments. Who were the 10 Commandments given to? Man, I cannot make it more important, more... How do you drive it home that he gave his commandments to the men who came out and then came into covenant with him back in Egypt? Let my son go that he may serve me. We didn't get to go until we became his son. We've got to become his people first. Then he gives us the commandments and the statutes and the judgments and the ordinances. It says he spoke to us face to face, panim to panim. Isn't that interesting? Panim to panim. I think it's the qualitative, him, face, and the quantitative face, us, whom he spoke with at the mountain. We were afraid. Don't talk to us anymore, lest we die. Moses was able to talk to him face to face, went up to the mountain with him. But not before Yehovah gave Israel's seed, the people who call him Yehovah, your Elohim, or thy Elohim. In this case, I am Yehovah, thy Elohim. He's talking to each one of Israel's seed. Who brought you out of the land of Egypt? They all came out of Egypt first. Then he gave them the commandments. Keeping any of his commandments doesn't make you his people until you leave the kingdom of your birth. You can't have one without the other. What did he say? You shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. We left our Elohim in Egypt to serve just one Elohim. 600,000 of us. We were all the spiritually born men. And we had the mixed head of households that went with us, with their families, their wives, and their children, and their servants, just like we did. Third commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of Yehovah in vain. You know, that's not about swearing the way most people understand swearing. No, it's about making a vow. It's about saying something in the name of Yehovah and not doing it. Don't do that. Bad idea. And he tells us, we're going to see it today, to take vows in his name. You shall take vows in my name. Or maybe he says oaths. Oaths, same thing. Oaths, vows. You shall take oaths in my name. But remember, when a woman takes an oath, a vow, and you hear it, you can nullify hers. If the man makes it, it's going to stand, isn't it? Talked about the Sabbath. Who keeps the Sabbath? In it, thou shalt do no work. Thou, nor thy son. Thy son is not the thou. The daughter is not the thou. The male, the female servant is not the thou. The ox, the donkey, or any of your cattle are not the thou. The servant, or the stranger, the ger, who dwells within your gates, not the thou. No, the thou is Israel's seed. The spiritually born man, the Ezrach man. There's only two kinds of people in Yehovah's kingdom. Ezrach, ger, that's it. No others. No Christians. Foolishness. I swallowed that pill years, and it took me a long time to escape that false doctrine that we had learned, those doctrines and traditions of men given to us by the Catholic Church, to turn us away from the Passover, to turn us away from the feasts of Yehovah and his kingship in our life. Honor your mother and your father. Don't murder or commit adultery. Don't commit adultery. Remember, we don't know what adultery is. We're trained what adultery is from the television. But taking a second woman who doesn't have a man is not adultery. Taking a woman who has a man, that's adultery. Finally, the 10th commandment. Oh my goodness, look at that. You shall not covet your neighbor's woman. Your neighbor's woman? A possession. His house, a possession. His field, his male servant, his female servant, his ox, his donkey, or anything else that is your neighbor's. We're talking about coveting your neighbor's possessions. Your woman, which we call a wife, is your possession. Bone of your bone, flesh of your flesh. My hand is supposed to do what I ask it to do. If it doesn't, how can I keep that hand in my life? It's out of control. I hate that. But when I'm saved, my hand is saved also. When you become Israel's spiritually born seed, the Ezra man, your woman becomes the daughter of Yehovah. Oh, there's great value in that, isn't there? Can you have more than one wife? Yeah, you sure can. All right, well, I'm going to, no, I got to talk about this. Oh, that they had such a heart in them that they would fear me and always keep my commandments, that it might be well with them and with their sons forever. Fear Yehovah and keep his commandments, that it might be well with them and their sons forever. Look what it says, the last verse. You shall walk in all the ways which Yehovah, your Elohim, has commanded you. Remember, the your, when we talk about this, Yehovah, really Yehovah, comma, your Elohim. When we talk about your Elohim, they're just clarifying who your Elohim is, which Yehovah, your Elohim, has commanded you, that you may live, that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which you shall possess. We prolong our days. You know what? The world thinks if you have a lot of money, you can prolong your days. I think prolonging or having a lot of money isn't probably not going to prolong your days. The world thinks so. But I don't know that that's true. Remember, it's Yehovah who says he's going to prolong our days if we do all that he commanded us. Well, let's start with chapter 6. He says, now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments, which Yehovah, your Elohim, commanded to teach you, that you might do them. Do them. They have observed them. The word is asham. Do them in the land which you go to possess, whether you go to possess it. That thou may fear Yehovah thy Elohim. He changed from a you, multiple men, plural, second person plural, to second person singular in verse 2. That thou may fear Yehovah thy Elohim, to keep all his statutes, his commandments. Oh, I like that. His statutes, his commandments. You know what? He says this for a purpose. We keep other Elohim's statutes and commandments. We're obligated to because of the covenants that we have made. But this is the whole point, is that we're not supposed to have covenants with other lawmakers and judges. You can't be a citizen of the United States and a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. Yehovah doesn't have dual citizenship. The world might. Yehovah doesn't. That you may fear Yehovah thy Elohim, to keep his statutes, his commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life. You know what? The New King James, well, here, they said it right. This is what it says. You, your son, and your grandson. It actually says son, probably says son seed. But we're still talking about the same group of people. We're just, with the seed, it would go multiple generations. Let's see what it says. Oh, I've got it already here. You, your sons, and no, it says and thy sons. Thy son, son. Thy son, son. All right. All the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Who's he commanding? Not talking to the ladies. Didn't promise our grandmothers. He promised our fathers. Remember, when we're talking about fathers, we're talking about multi-generational fathers. Just the same way we're talking about seed going the other direction, all males. Therefore hear, O Israel. Boy, here's one. You know, sometimes I think the things that we repeat the most, we understand the least. Our Father, which art in heaven. This is the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. What Lord are we talking about? Is this Jesus' prayer? The Lord's Prayer. The names that we use flabbergast me. But it's, this is a good prayer. Our Father. Who's he talking to first of all? He's talking to the men, not the ladies, who call Yehovah their Father. Those are the Ezra men that we're talking about. Hallowed be, our Father which art in heaven. Heaven. Hallowed be thy name. What's his name? The average person has no clue what the name of the Father is. And in Jesus. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We're talking about another Elohim. And we're going to do his will on earth just as it's done in heaven. Here they're saying, therefore hear, O Israel, be careful to observe it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as Yehovah Elohim of your fathers has promised you. Thy fathers have promised thee a land flowing with milk and honey. Shema, O Israel, is the word that they're using here. Masculine, singular. Second person. Be careful to observe it. Do it. Guard it. Here, they put observe. And it's Shema. Guard it. Keep it. That it may be well with thee, and that thou may multiply greatly, as Yehovah of your fathers, the Elohim, Yehovah, Elohim of your fathers, has promised thee a land flowing with milk and honey. Now here we are with the Shema. Hear, O Israel. Who's Israel? We love to say it, but we don't know who it is. The Jews who follow Judaism think they're Israel. They got some blood in them. They do it from their mothers. Oh my gosh. The mothers! Why the mothers? Foolishness. Hear, O Israel, it's not about blood. It's about spiritual birth. It's about leaving the kingdom of your birth and joining yourself to Yehovah's people. And then at Passover, becoming the spiritually born seed. Hear, O Israel, what do they say? The Lord, our God. Or Adonai, our God. Adonai is one. No, it's not what it says. It uses his name, Yehovah, our Elohim. Yehovah is first, not one. Why do they put one here? This is the translators that do this. Though I think the Jews do it just as equally as as poorly. Yehovah is first. Let's take a look at this word. It's Echad. Echad. I wrote an article about it. You can see it here. Because the man listened to the woman and chose to disobey Yehovah, the lawmaker and judge of the whole earth, the Creator supposedly said these words. This is what it says in Genesis 1 in my Bible, the New King James Version. It says it in the King James as well, I'll bet. It says, behold, the man has become like one of us to know good and evil. Echad? One of us? The one has become Echad, become first. But they make it one, and then they add the words like and of us. But those words aren't there. It's a lie. There's only one lawmaker and judge. Period. The words like and of us are supplied or added words and are not in the manuscript. But the real kicker is this. The word one is the word of God, which is often rendered as one in the scriptures, but is not limited to that word. Another way that it is used is the word first. Let's take a look at this. Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first, the Echad day. The first day, not the one day. What Yehovah, the lawmaker and judge, is saying in 3:22, that's the one we just talked about up here, like one of us, is this, is that the man has made himself and his ways first instead of Yehovah and his ways. Do you hear that? The whole idea about being Elohim kind, having him as our father, being his heir, is that we're going to obey him. We're going to put him first. Thou shalt have no other Elohim existing before my face. I put a better rendering of this verse, in my opinion, and in the light of the chapter, is this. Behold, man is become first from his kind to know good and evil. Probably it isn't even the man, because that's what we're talking about. The man is become first from his kind. We got a new kind. This is one that's created in Yehovah's image and in his likeness. But the very first man of his kind decided to make his ways first. Behold, the man is become first from his kind to know good and evil. The man who makes himself and his ways first cannot be with Yehovah, the only true lawmaker and judge, and live forever. Can't do it. Here's what he goes on to say. And now, we just talked about the man, the first of his kind, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put out his hand and take also from the tree of life, can't have that. A man who will not put Yehovah first. A man who puts his way first isn't going to work. You can't let him eat from the tree of life. It'd be an abomination. And now, lest he put out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore, Yehovah, the lawmaker and judge, sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. We're talking about the man. So he drove out the man, there it is, Ha-Adam, and he placed cherubim on the east side of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way of the tree of life. Yes, the woman went out with him, but he put out the man. She went with him because she's bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. We've got much to learn. Yehovah is first. We want to use one because it's for the Benitarians and the Trinitarians, isn't it? What an abomination is that? Oh, Jesus is God in the flesh, don't you know? And there's a spirit as well. No, Yehovah is Spirit Elohim. Verse 5. Thou shall love. Remember, he's talking about the men. Each man individually. You could argue he's talking to Israel. Let my son go that he may serve me, the plural he. Either way works. Thou shalt love Yehovah, thy Elohim, with all thy lavab, with all thy nefesh, and with all thy me'od, strength, might. These are the things that we're going to do and the things that we're going to say. You know, these exact words are only used one other time. With all your heart, with all your soul, with all your me'od. They're only used one other time in the scriptures. Here it is in 2 Kings. It's talking about Josiah. Look what it says here on the right. Oh, let me adjust this. Now before him, talking about Josiah, there was no king like him who turned to Yehovah. This is what's going to happen to us in the last days, is we're going to rise up and turn to Yehovah. He said, with all your heart and with all your soul. He says, when you do it, you'll find him. Here's what Josiah did. There was no king like him who turned to Yehovah with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his me'od, according to all the law of Moses. Nor after him did any arise like him. When we're talking about loving Yehovah with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength, we're talking about doing it according to all the law of Moses. Yeshua wasn't coming up with anything new. He knew that we are going to be doing it according to all the law of Moses. He knew who he was talking to when he said, thou shalt love Yehovah, thy Elohim, with all thy heart and thy soul and thy might. Now these are the commandments. We're going back to Deuteronomy 6, the beginning of this chapter. The statutes, the judgments, which Yehovah your Elohim commands you to teach you, that ye might do them in the land which ye go to possess. That thou mightst fear Yehovah thy Elohim, to keep his statutes and his commandments which I command thee, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, that thy days may be prolonged. Here's Joshua. But take careful heed to do the commandments and the Torah which Moses, the servant of Yehovah, commanded you, to love Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Hear that? He's tying serving Yehovah with all your heart, with all your soul, to what? To being careful to heed and to do the commandments and the Torah which Moses, the servant of Yehovah, commanded you. Do you see how they cannot be separated? Loving Yehovah, obeying Yehovah, can't be separated. You don't love him if you don't obey him. Ladies, you don't love your husband if you don't obey your husband. It works the same way. This is a bit longer. This is Deuteronomy 30. Now it shall come to pass, when all these things come upon you, the blessings and the curse which I have set before you, and you call them to mind among the nations where Yehovah, your Elohim, drives you. This is where we are today. And you return to Yehovah, your Elohim, and obey his voice according to all that I commanded you today. Today. You and your sons, with all your heart and with all your soul. There's the heart and the soul, the levav and the nefesh. Again, thoughts and emotions. Remember, the heart is that thing in us that only Elohim knows. He's the one that searches the heart. He's the one that tests the mind to give every man according to his deeds, according to the fruit of his actions. That Yehovah, your Elohim, will bring you back from captivity and have compassion on you and gather you again from the nations where Yehovah, your Elohim, has scattered you. If any of you are driven to the farthest parts of heaven, from there Yehovah, your Elohim, will gather you, and from there he will bring you. Then Yehovah, your Elohim, it's probably thy, then Yehovah, thy Elohim, will bring thee to the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. He shall prosper thee and multiply thee more than thy fathers. And Yehovah, your Elohim, will circumcise your heart and the heart of thy seed, to love Yehovah, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your soul. Look at how many times he says this, levav and nefesh, that you may live. Also, Yehovah, your Elohim, will put these curses on your enemies and on those who hate you, who persecuted you. And thou wilt again obey the voice of Yehovah and do his commandments, which I command you today. Well, I've got a lot here. You know, I want you to see, love Yehovah, your Elohim. It all has to do with serving him. If we don't love him, we won't serve him. And it goes both ways, doesn't it? You can't separate it. Does love start with fear? I think it does. The fear of Elohim is the beginning of wisdom. A child first fears his parents, and then later, once he learns their ways, he loves them. He wants to obey them. Let me read some more of these. Therefore you shall love Yehovah your Elohim and keep his charge, his statutes, his judgments, his commandments, always. I love that. His. And it shall be that if you earnestly obey my voice, which I commanded you today, to love Yehovah your Elohim, talking about Moses' voice, to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul, that I will give you rain. Then I will give thee the rain for thy land in its season, the early rain and the latter rain, that thou may gather in thy grain, thy new wine, and thy oil. For if thou carefully keep these commandments, which I command thee, to love Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in all his ways and to hold fast to him, then Yehovah will drive out all these nations from before you, and you will dispossess greater and mightier nations than yourself. We will. We're going to see it in the last days. This small nation is going to be feared worldwide. They either join us or they're destroyed. Harsh words, I know. We'll talk about that. You either become Elohim kind or you don't get kindness because you're not Elohim kind. Kindness goes with kind. Oh, we have much to learn. That's what this Kassid is all about. Elohim kind. Well, we got enough here. Let's move on. And these words, which I command thee today, shall be in thy heart. What do you say? Love him with all thy heart and with all thy nefesh. First, you got to put these words in your heart. Oh, that they had such a heart in them that they would fear me and always keep my commandments, that it might be well with them and their sons forever. Deuteronomy 5:29. This is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after these days, says Yehovah. I will put my law in their minds, write it on their hearts. Same Torah, not a different Torah, same Torah, only this time instead of being written on stone, it's going to be written on our minds, or be put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. And I will be their Elohim, and they will be my people. So it was. This is Samuel 16. So it was when they came that he looked at Eliab and said, surely Yehovah's anointed is before him. This is Samuel who is coming. But Yehovah said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him, for Yehovah does not see as man sees. What does Yehovah see? For man looks at the outward appearance, but Yehovah looks at the heart, the levav. Lamed bet bet, guiding the house in the house. When we're talking about the heart, we're talking about that which only Elohim knows, the spirit of Elohim works in. And that is going to guide the house within the house. Man doesn't see the house in the house. He sees the house, but he doesn't see my woman, my ex. She didn't know my heart. She didn't know that heart that was leading this house, that really was leading our house to her loss. Yehovah knew. Reminds me of that verse in Isaiah 57. The righteous perishes, and no man takes it to heart. Merciful men are taken away, while no one considers that the righteous is taken away from the wicked, the evil. I was delivered. I would never have left that woman. I didn't have enough sense in those days to leave that woman. Yehovah delivered me so that I could follow him wholly. She didn't want me to follow Yehovah wholly. She wanted me to follow Yehovah according to the doctrines and traditions of men that we had learned for the majority of our married life and before. Yehovah looks at the heart. And these are the words. What are the words? These are the words which I command you today. What are we talking about? We have to go back to verse 1. Now these are the statutes, the commandments, the statutes, the judgments Yehovah your Elohim has commanded to teach you, that you may do them in the land which you cross over to possess. These are the words. Thou shalt teach them diligently to thy sons. Thy sons. And shall talk of them when you sit in thy house, when thou walk in the way, when thou lie down, and when thou rise up. We're teaching them to our sons because they're going to lead their families. We don't give our daughters away to the wicked people. We give our daughters away to righteous sons. We want to keep them safe too. But they're going to provide sons for those righteous men. And they learned to be good women because they learned to be good daughters, serving their father, probably even their brothers. He says, thou shalt bind them as a sign on thy hand, and they shall be, look at what they say, as frontlets between thy eyes. This is what the Jews do with the webbing that they put on their hand and the things that they put on their head, the phylacteries that they put on their head. Let's talk about that for a moment. This appears to be a figure of speech, not a command at all. This is what we do. We treat it differently. He says, and y'all bind, here's the word that they use, kashar. You know, it looks like something that's being wrapped. It really does, from just this one verse. But we've got to look at it in the context of the whole scriptures. Line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. Thou shalt bind them for a mark. Here's the word mark, oath. Oath. On thy hands. Here's the oath. Oath. It says mark. An agreement or covenant by two where a sign or a mark of the agreement is made as a reminder to both parties. You know what? I got a hunch that we're going to see in the context that we're listening to this or seeing this, that it may be the blood that we put on the doorposts of our house. That's the outward sign. But there's something going on that's going to be between our eyes. Remember, our eyes, and is the word that they're using there, has to do with where the wealth of our soul comes from. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Let me move down. It shall be to thee a mark. Here's the oath that we're talking about. To thee for a mark upon thy hand, as a memorial between thy eyes. This is Exodus 13, the chapter right after Passover. Talking about exactly the same things. But here it doesn't say anything about binding. It just simply says, it shall be as an oath upon thy hand. As a memorial, they called it here a mark between thy eyes. What do they call it? A mark between thy eyes, yeah. But here it's saying a memorial, a zikran, memento, memorial, a remembering between thy eyes, that Yehovah's law may be in your mouth with a strong hand, for with a strong hand Yehovah had brought you out of Egypt. It, telling your sons as you eat the Passover, shall be a sign. This is what will we do when our son asks us? This is what we're talking about. The sign, an oath on your hand. There's only one hand. It's funny, it doesn't say plural hand, it says one hand. And for a mark, remember, remembering, this happens to be another word altogether. Tafafa, they say tafafa, but look at, tafafa has tet, yod, fe, but that's not what this is. It's a bit different. The Jews use it. What is the word that they use for that? Tephalim. Mark them in the deepest places of your soul. I think really is what we're talking about. We're saying mark. This word means mark. Here it is, right here. This is tet, fe. He says mark. This is ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible. So we're talking between thy eyes. The eyes, we talked about this in Genesis 29 when we said that Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. We talked about Leah being more of an internally beautiful woman. Here we're talking about the eyes. Leah's eyes were delicate, tender, rock. Here's the eye that we're talking about. I think I had, the eye reveals the heart of a person. Remember, Yehovah is the one who sees the heart. A wellspring or fountain as the eye of a ground. When you talk about An as a well that's coming out of the ground. Here, let me just see what this says. The pictograph An is a picture of an eye. The noon, the seed, is a picture of the seed, and the noon is a picture of the seed representing continuous. Combined, they mean eye of continuance. Well, I don't know that I've done a good job of this. There's so much here. It's hard to put it all together for you in just a moment. I spent a couple hours doing this yesterday. And telling your son as you eat the Passover shall be a sign on your hand and a mark between your eyes. For by the strength of hand, Yehovah brought us out of Egypt. Well, let's look at the next verse because they go together. This is talking, it says, thou shalt write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. What are we writing them on? Is it possible going back to past? Is it possible it is going back to Passover? They shall take some of the blood, put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the house where they eat it. You should take a bunch of hyssops, dip it in the blood in the basin. This is all Genesis chapter 12. Just again, the chapter before, they're saying exactly the same thing in Deuteronomy 13:6. Strike the lintel, the two doorposts with the blood in the basin, and none of you shall go out of your house until morning. I think that we're talking about having it in our hands. These are the things that we're going to do. Having it in our mind, these are going to be the thoughts that are going to be created in us so that we remember to do all the commandments of Yehovah, our Elohim. As it is with our house, so it is with our body. I guess I'm thinking of the lintel and the posts, kind of like the hands and the forehead, in a sense, on a man. Remember, we were talking about the house within a house, the lavav, thing that leads the house within the house. For Yehovah will pass through and strike the Egyptians, and he will see the blood on the lintel and on the two doorposts, and Yehovah will pass over the door and not allow the destroyer to come into the house. You shall write them on the doorposts. Write them. What does that mean? I mean, if we were to take this literally, to say write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, what are we supposed to write? It doesn't make sense to take this literally. What did we say this was? A figure of speech. Let me move on. This is 10. So it shall be, when Yehovah thy Elohim brings thee into the land which Yehovah swore to thy fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give thee large and beautiful cities which you did not build. You know what? This is going to happen again. We're going to get large and beautiful cities that we did not build. Houses full of all good things, which you did not fill. Hew not wells, which you did not dig. Vineyards, olive trees, which you did not plant. And when you have eaten and are full, then beware, lest you forget Yehovah, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. You know what? Look at what he's talking about here. Well, he says that brings you to the land of which he swore to your fathers on, to the large and beautiful cities which you did not build, houses full of good things which you did not fill, hew not wells. Then he talks about when you have eaten and are full. You know, I always thought, I guess I took this more literally, I always thought that it kind of went with 8. Look what it says in 8. Here, let me see if I can get it all on here. When you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless Yehovah your Elohim for the good land which he has given you. I kind of felt, and I think I even wrote a paper on it, that we were supposed to pray after we ate. But you know what? Seeing it in this context, I think I was wrong. I think there's more to this. Eaten and are full. Tasted and are full. This is about being grateful and acknowledging who the giver is, who gave us the fields that we did not plant, who gave us the houses full of things that we did not fill, who gave us the cities that we did not build. It's about being grateful once we have tasted and experienced these wonderful things that Yehovah has given to us. Don't take them for granted. It's easy to do that. That's why it says, then beware, lest you forget Yehovah, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, who gave you these things. Thou shalt fear Yehovah your Elohim. Look at that. Fear Yehovah. This is the word. What is the word they use here? Let's look at it. Thou shalt fear. Yareh, fear. They say morally, revere, causatively, to frighten. No, we're talking about dread. We're talking about fear is what Yareh is all about. Fear Yehovah. Thou shalt fear Yehovah thy Elohim and serve him, and shall take oaths in his name. There it is. We're going to take oaths in his name. Thou shalt not go after other Elohim. The Elohim here, let me read this. Thou shalt not go after other Elohim, lawmakers and judges. The people's Elohim, the people's lawmaker and judges. He's clarifying who the other Elohim are. The people's Elohim, lawmakers and judges who are all around you. Don't go after them. Separate yourself from them. You know what? Making this gods, translating the word Elohim as gods, really throws us for a loop, because we don't understand that those men, and to our chagrin, women, who are put into these offices are Elohim. They're lawmakers and judges. Because we don't understand that, we think we're not having other Elohim. It's really a play on words. It's like the law. Bill, Tracy, I know you know what I'm talking about. The law, you gotta understand the code. You don't understand the code, you're gonna be swept away. We're safe by knowing the words of our Elohim, the Elohim, the lawmaker and judge of the whole earth. Not the people's Elohim. The people's Elohims are going to get you in trouble every time. They're sneaky, deceptive. They'll carry away your soul to hell. For Yehovah, your Elohim, is a jealous Elohim among you. Look at that. They use thy and you. For Yehovah, thy Elohim, is a jealous Elohim among you. Y'all. Lest the anger of Yehovah, thy Elohim, be aroused against thee, and destroy thee from the face of the earth. The righteous inherit the earth. The wicked are destroyed from the earth. You shall not tempt Yehovah, your Elohim, as you tempted him in Massah. You know what? I saw this and it reminded me of what Moses keeps saying, that I didn't get to go into the promised land because of you. He said it 2 or 3 times already. But really it was because of his actions when he hurt us. It was him that did it. But, you know, we were rebellious then. This is why he hit the rock. He was mad at us. This is where Moses hit the rock. Instead, S-T-E-A-D, of speaking to it. Massah means trial, temptation, a name given to the place where the Israelites, by their murmuring for want of water, provoked Yehovah and Moses to anger against them. It was also called Meribah. So Massah is also Meribah. 17. You shall diligently keep the commandments of Yehovah your Elohim, his testimonies, his statutes, which he commanded you. Going back to first person. And thou shalt do what is right and good in the sight of Yehovah. Don't do what is good and right in the sight of your neighbors. Don't do what is good and right in the sight of the Elohim of this land. Do what is good in the sight of Yehovah, that it may be well with thee, and that thou may go in and possess the good land which Yehovah swore to thy fathers. You know what? Being able to do this, it's easy for me to say it, but being able to do it takes conviction. Bill, Tracy, bravo. You guys have conviction. You guys know your Elohim. And you're willing to step up, even in front of the judge, and use language that they've never heard before. You know what? We have a language that is a true and concise language. We don't trick people like they do. Trickery. That's all the courts are. The law of the land, it's trickery. It's trickery. You guys don't know it. And you shall do what is right and good in the sight of Yehovah, that it may be well with thee, and that thou may go and possess the good land which Yehovah swore to your fathers, to cast out thy enemies from before you, as Yehovah has spoken. Cast out our enemies before us. Here, what's this word here? Obed, hating our adversary. Thy adversary. Thy adversaries. That's what this word says here. Thy adversaries, thy enemies. An unjust man is an abomination to the righteous, and he who is upright in his way is an abomination to the wicked. Oh, here's the one, Isaiah 57, I just read to you. A righteous man perishes, but righteous man, and no man takes it to heart. Merciful men, Enoshim, plural from Ish, are taken away, while no one considers that the righteous is taken away from the evil. He shall enter into peace. He, the righteous, shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his own uprightness. They have a form of righteousness, but it's not righteousness. It's their own uprightness. When your son asks you in time to come, saying, what is the meaning of these testimonies and statutes and judgments which Yehovah our Elohim commanded you? What's the meaning of this? Then you shall say to your son, we were slaves. Then thou shalt say to thy son, we were slaves. This is Avadim. We were slaves of Pharaoh. We were Pharaoh's slaves, Pharaoh's Avadim in Egypt. And Yehovah brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And Yehovah showed signs and wonders great and severe against Egypt, against Pharaoh and all his household. Then he brought us out from there, that he might bring us in to give us the land which he swore to our fathers. And Yehovah commanded us to observe all these statutes, to fear Yehovah our Elohim, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. Hear that? His statutes, his judgments are for our good always. They're not going to change. They're the firm foundation that we build our lives on. I put, we men reap what we sow. With that said, let me read you some verses. Then hear thou in heaven, and do, and judge thy servants, condemning the wicked, to bring his way upon his head, and justifying the righteous, to give him according to his righteousness. Then hear thou from heaven, and do, and judge thy servants by requiting the wicked, by recompensing his way upon his head, and by justifying the righteous by giving him according to his righteousness. It's all about what we do. Riches profit not in the day of wrath. No, in the day of wrath, your riches aren't going to mean anything. But righteousness delivers from death. The righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. In the way of righteousness is life, and in the pathway thereof there is no death. No death. No moot is the word they're using there. No, ma'ev. Mavet. It comes from the word moot. Let me continue. Righteousness keeps the upright in the way, but wickedness overthrows the sinner. Remember, we're talking about for our good always. Righteousness keeps the upright in the way, but wickedness overthrows the sinner. The way of the wicked is an abomination unto Yehovah, but he loves him that follows after righteousness. Yehovah loves the man who follows after righteousness. It's going to lead you to Passover and to becoming his Kassid. The hoary head is a crown of glory. I've got a hoary head, gray head, if it is found in the way of righteousness. Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in judgment. Hear that? The ungodly shall not stand in the judgment. They're going to fall in the judgment. Nor sinners in the congregation of the righteousness, of the righteous. There's not going to be any sinners standing there. There's only going to be righteous people standing there. For Yehovah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. For our good always. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keeps the paths of judgment and preserves the way of his Kassid. There's that word Kassid. Gather together my Kassid, my saints, my kind, those who cut covenant with me by slaughter. Psalms 50 verse 5. His Kassid, there it is. He keeps the paths of judgment and preserves the way of his Kassid, his kind. You're either Elohim kind and you live forever, or you're mankind and you perish. Belial's kind. That thou may walk in the way of good men. This is Tovim men. Tovim men. Is that a plural? A qualitative plural? Tovim men, good men. And keep the paths of the righteous, Zadik. He that turneth away his ear from hearing the Torah, says even his prayer is an abomination. You know what? There's a lot of people, myself included, for years, prayed to Yehovah. I don't think he heard my prayer. I thought he did. I was convinced he did. But I don't think he did. It says he didn't. I didn't love his Torah. Turneth away his ear from hearing the Torah. Even his prayer shall be an abomination. First Kings says, then hear thou in heaven, and do, and judge thy servants, condemning the wicked. to bring his way upon his head, and justifying the righteous, to give him according to his righteousness. Ye have plowed wickedness. Ye have reaped iniquity. Plowed wickedness, ye have reaped iniquity. Ye have eaten the fruits of lies, because thou did trust in thy way. Remember, he was talking about who put the man put his way first. Because thou did trust in thy way, in the multitude of thy mighty men. Oh my. Yeah, there's lots of people out there. That's what they trust in, the armed forces, don't they? Foolish people. Yehovah rewardeth me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanliness of my hands. This is David, Song of David. Yehovah rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanliness of my hands, has he recompensed me. For I have kept the way of Yehovah, and have not wickedly departed from my Elohim. For all his judgments were before me, and his statutes. I did not depart from them. I was also upright before him, and have kept myself from my own iniquity. Therefore Yehovah has recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his eyesight. Well, we started with sowing. Remember, we said, what a man sows, a man reaps. Sow to yourself in righteousness. Reap in kindness. Hear that? Kindness. This is our chesed. Chesed. A form of chesed. I think this is really cool. They said reap in mercy. No, we're reaping in kindness. We are Elohim kindness. This is what we're going to reap. Break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek Yehovah till he come and rain righteousness upon you. Well, one last verse here. I've got 130 right now. Then it will be righteousness for us. Hear that? What is righteousness? Then it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to observe all these commandments before Yehovah, our Elohim, as he has commanded us. That's what righteousness is. But here's righteousness defined. Observing Yehovah's ways is the Ezrah's, Israel's righteousness. Yehovah doesn't need Gentiles observing his ways. All you're doing is muddying the waters. First, you got to become his people. You got to leave the kingdom of your birth. You know what? That doesn't happen overnight. It happens step by step, little by little. I want to read you something. This is Isaiah 52. I think I can find it fast enough. Talked about Yehovah being our rear guard. Where is that? Oh, there it is down here. For you shall not go out with haste. We're not going out hastily. He says, depart, depart. From there, touch no unclean. Go out from the midst of her. What are we talking about? Babylon. Egypt. Be clean, you who bear the vessels of Yehovah. For you shall not go out with haste, nor go by flight. Don't go out hastily. Don't go out in fear. For Yehovah will go before you, and the Elohim of Israel will be your rear guard. New King James says your reward. No, the Elohim of Israel, Yehovah, will go before you, and Yehovah, the Elohim of Israel, will be your rear guard. He's got our front. He's got our back. But we're going out and separating ourselves from the world. Awake, awake, put on your strength, O Zion, put on your beautiful garments. O Jerusalem, the holy city, Zion, Jerusalem, the holy city are his people. Come out, awake, shake yourself from the dust, arise, O Jerusalem, loose yourself from the bonds of your neck, take off your own bonds. How do we take off our bonds? We've entered into covenants that we've got to get rid of. How do we do it? For me, it started with a simple thing. Taking my driver's license and signing it under duress. Getting another driver's license from another jurisdiction. I call it a church driver's license, an ecclesiastical driver's license. Don't confuse church with Christianity. We're not talking about Christianity. I'm talking about church, the ecclesia. The called out ones is what the church is supposed to be. I've got an ecclesiastical driver's license. Had it for years. But the very first thing I did was sign my state driver's license under duress and simply invalidated it. An easy act. There's no downside to it. When you go in to sign it under duress. I'll teach you how to do it in my coming out series. Read it. There's only 9 blogs. The last one I talk about it. But don't read the last one. Read them all and find out. You got to know why you're doing it first. You're in bondage. You sold yourselves for nothing. That's what it says. For thus says Yehovah, you sold yourselves for nothing. You shall be redeemed without money. For thus says Yehovah, Elohim, my people went at first to Egypt to dwell there. Then the Assyrian oppressed them. He says you blaspheme him all day long, saying we're his, but we're not his. Then my people are taken away for nothing. For those who rule over them, make them wail, says Yehovah, and my name is blasphemed continually every day. Yeah, we say we're his, but we're not. We're the people of we belong to the people of this world. The lawmaker and judges of the United States, if we're here in the United States. What's the good news? Here's the good news, verse 7. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who proclaims peace, who brings glad tidings of good things, who proclaims salvation, who says to Zion, your Elohim reigns. This is what it's all about. This is the good news. Your Elohim reigns, or he should. Right now, most people have the Elohim of this world, the lawmakers and judges of this world reigning in their lives. You got to leave one and join yourself to the other. I'm talking to men. Ladies, follow your man. Do him good all the days of your life. Well, we only got one chapter done today. But I think this is a good chapter. I really like this chapter. Next week we'll try to get through chapter 7 and 8. Thank you for joining me today. You know what? That blog, I want to just show you that on my website. What we got here? Joe made it this week. That's nice. Hi, Joe. On my website, if we go to the Coming Out series. This is where I want you to start reading. Coming Out. Read this. Coming Out. There's really 9. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and then a bunch more here. I'm going to leave off several of these. But I really want you to read this one, and then all of these down through here. These are talking about what it means to come out. Signing your driver's license under duress. How do you do that? We've got to somehow become Yehovah's man. Like I said, keeping his commandments doesn't do any good if you still belong to another master. You can't have 2 masters. heard that somewhere. All right. Well, let's call it quits for today. Thank you for joining me. Please come back next week. We'll talk about chapters 7 and 8. Love you tons. Bye now.